What's up, my precious little pack, and welcome back once more to, well, you already know the game. I shouldn't have to state it at this point. It's why you came here. Okay. On to the concept idea I was talking about earlier, but before I do, I'd like to say something that should trigger a few memories in every single one of you. Well, for those of you that have been around for a little while, and for those of you who are well-versed around the forum. Ships? Well, no. More specifically, fleets repairing in the sector. Anybody remember that? I do. Somebody else along with myself. From the clan, we're talking earlier, well, from the time I got up until around the time that I finished the event, well, finished grinding out more boxes for my Phoenix. But let's go ahead and let's just take a moment to talk that over. Or more specifically, the idea that was brought up. Something that I've talked about before is, I believe I've talked about before, I can't guarantee it, is a small outpost that can be deployed in the sector by any player. Only one can be deployed. However, it acts similar to your standard base or your standard outpost in the form that it is capable of repairing a fleet, or in this case, we're allowing it to have two, and it can A, repair your fleets that are docked with it, and 2, store resources to increase your total capacity, and it will function just like a normal base. The catch is, it will take up one of your 7 fleets because you have to equip built modules that will be produced from a module from your main base, here, where I'm sitting at right now, we all see here. It will be produced at a new module that will be called the micro module or the mobile module. And what it does is it produces mobile or micro modules which can be loaded into cargo ships. Now, anybody who's been around long enough remembers this one little ship, one thing that we all wanted to be a cargo ship, and that is the suspicious cargo ships. Very specifically, that giant freighter. Now, I was trying to think of how could we reuse game assets to reduce the amount of coding that have to be written, but allow something to be used that the players wanted. Well, that's how. We take the freighter and it carries the modules, of which you are allowed 6, one of which that is required is the micro bridge, which is a 1x1 effectively shrunk down version of the bridge. So as you see right now, this is a 2x2 in what the micro bridge would do. It would function as a standard bridge. However, you wouldn't have turrets in the base. You would only have a fleet bay, well, a micro fleet bay, and this is hilarious, along with everything being shrunk down because they have to fit within the cargo of these freighters that you'll be allowed to build via this new module. Effectively, they're going to use, again, more game assets. They're just going to scale down the bridges and things we already have, the factories and stuff like that. They're just going to scale them down to be 1x1 squares. Now, how deployment works is you'll be given an 8x8 grid where you can put the 6 cargo ships, which will take up a 1x1 grid, and then the 6 modules that they take up. The bridge, the mobile factory, the mobile fleet bay, as well as either mobile storage or mobile repair shops. Well, no. Fleet bay would actually function as a repair shop, so that wouldn't be needed. So you're going to get storage that you can just hold out there, and it'll be to increase your storage while you're out at the base, so you don't have to come back to your base right away to deploy. Well, not to deploy, to actually store or repair. You can go to this little one. So if you have a cargo fleet, you could replace it with this mobile module, which will function as many different things. But one thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to introduce my support ships idea with this one because this would actually make sense. Why leave a base completely defensive if you can't put any ships in it, because the fleet that is actually in it is only cargo ships, freighters at that, just for hauling out the modules? Well, I thought about it and I thought I wanted to have this little base, this little outpost, produce fleets for the player. And remember my support idea. I wanted it to be a useful little addition to the game that could help players any level, as well as add a new interesting aspect to the game. However, I introduced it incorrectly and it wasn't well received because a lot of people didn't want shrunk down versions of ships they already had. They wanted new ships. So this new one would take the micro factory or the mobile factory, and it would produce lightweight ships that can be produced with the resources you store at this base. So okay, I'm getting way ahead of myself. Let's just jump back here for a minute. This micro module, there are no fittings for them. You can't equip armor or anything like this, because I thought about it for a little while. I thought they should be default, so whatever you equip on them at the base, as you produce them, they're stuck like that. So if you equip weapons on the micro bridge, it's going to be in that fitting when it's out in the field, and you cannot change it in the field. You have to bring it back to the base. I wanted to make it so that you had to spend time going out and coming back just to refit until you get that perfect balance of what you want. However, I wanted it to function as a repair bay and things like that. I also wanted it to produce ships. So introducing the support idea into this one, under the micro modules, you'll have the support module, which will be a researchable micro module, similar to the others, but it allows mobile research. So similar to how we research ships, weapons, and things like that here, this new little module, which will be, again, in a 1x1 square, just like everything else, because you're allowed only an 8x8 square to deploy your little outpost, you will research stuff from this little outpost. Now, how you deploy it is similar to how you deploy any other fleet. You would launch them at first, but instead of having an escort button, you can only, if you put one freighter ship in a fleet, you can only put other freighter ships in the fleet, and they cannot be escorted. They have to fly out on their own. Well, you can escort them with another ship, but you can't escort them, you can't have them escort another group. That's what I was trying to say. And the general reason for that is because we would remove the escort button and replace it out in the sector with a deploy button. Instead, it would deploy wherever it's at after a short setup time of roughly 5 minutes, and then you'd have your small outpost. Now from there, you would go into the outpost and you'd have, similar to the base view we have here, however, it'd be very limited. You'd only have an 8x8 area to deploy yourself in. Now that seems like a lot when you only have 12 items you have to manage, but how you set it up is going to be entirely up to you, as well as what you bring with you. Because remember, you're going to need resources out there to produce from the micro or mobile ship factory, which can only produce support ships, which are produced there. However, those support ships can only be deployed in a set area around their outpost, and they're effectively security, and they will intercept AI fleets and things like that. And this is something else that I was thinking of. If you deploy it in the middle of a sector and you want to farm points, well, this would be a more efficient way to farm for players because you could produce fleets all the time. However, this base will function as a fleet as well, and if you fall within level gating, it can be attacked by the AIs and the players. So you have to be careful and watch it and produce your fleets that way. Second, there will be no cargo capacity of the freighters. That way you can't go out and deploy with resources to start producing ships right away. You can, however, coin ships because it will function as a standard base. However, I was also thinking about how would you focus on ensuring that players would actually be interested in this long term. And this actually got interesting because I thought reset. Now, it's not what you think. Instead of having permanent researchable technology for the small base, whenever it's redeployed or packed up, any research completed at the support factory is reset, so you have to continue off. So you can't continue off from where you left off, you have to restart. So this would give a permanent end to coiners having an advantage. However, I wanted to make sure that the research was extremely short and extremely easy and manageable. And when you deploy this base, you'll get 3 new fleet slots that are all support. However, when you set the fleets up, they'll automatically be set out and they'll sit in a triangle formation, 1 above and 2 below the outpost. And they will move to intercept AI fleets or player fleets that are en route to attack, or that you order to attack within a certain radius of the outpost, because they can't go outside of the support range for it, which I was thinking would probably be 1 astronomical unit. That's right, because in the game, the minimum jump range is 1 astronomical unit, so I figured that the support range should be 1 astronomical unit for these support class fleets. And this is only for the fleet that is given, so if we actually pull my panel out even further, we would no longer see this panel for this deployed fleet because we would say that it is the freighters. So it would be 6 ships, each carrying a module, and the module is now deployed. This no longer counts as a fleet, so it wouldn't show that it's a fleet. Instead, it would show the base icon. However, when you select it, if you're in your main base, this would be replaced and it would say View Outpost 2, or View Micro or Mobile Outpost. And the number of things you can do with this little outpost is, like I said, you can store resources to produce ships to be able to produce farming fleets, micro farming fleets of unique support ships that fall under the standard classifications of 6 ships, and you get a carrier, a cutter, frigate, battleship, cruiser, and a destroyer. And that is so you can set them up to be able to farm outposts if you set it up near AI outposts. You could set it up for any number of ways. However, I wanted to think of something. You cannot set up your micro outpost anywhere near your main outpost at all. You cannot set it up within 1 astronomical unit. So that means you cannot deploy it within your planet's range. So you have to deploy it out in the sector. And this idea was inspired because we wanted a way for players to be able to repair their fleets out in the open, but I also wanted to include a new aspect of VEGA that I don't think anyone's thought of. And I thought of my support idea before. That was an idea that, in my eyes, would have been good. However, how I portrayed it, it fell short extremely much. So when I actually rewatched my own video on my computer, it was fairly lacking. So the objective of this is to actually change the support idea to be more of a base defense or attack, and you can order the fleets around only within their certain astronomical area, the astronomical unit around the outpost. So careful positioning could mean you could give yourself an advantage in a PvP fight where you have to run away. And this is another aspect. We want them to be a little bit more functional in the terms that you could actually use them to warp around. So in Sector right now, you have to have an escort. You have to escort a jump ship to be able to jump around in Sector. However, what I wanted to do is I wanted it to be, no matter where you're at, you'd have a beacon off of this fleet, off of this one specific micro outpost, and you could warp any fleet you want with a cooldown to this outpost, so they could be within the safe protection of the support ships that could slow down enemy fleets that are trying to destroy your fleet, or you could focus on repairing. Now this would mean you could theoretically repair 2 fleets at a time at the resource cost, and again you'd have to have storage modules to be able to carry the resources as well as produce the ships. And the micro ship factory would work the same way our standard one does. You'd select it, you'd click build ship, you'd choose which of the 6 ship classes you want to build from, and then you would start setting up your fitting from there. And the weapons would include all standard weapon types, which are energy, projectile, kinetic now, and explosive. You'd also have specials for these ships that make them a little bit more unique. You'd have a general thruster, which increases all thruster speeds. It increases forward speed, strafe speed, rotation speed, and rear speed by 20% at max. And there would be 5 levels of these researchable technologies. However, I wanted the research times for these technologies to be extremely short, so if anyone wants to play short term with these bases and then pull it back to their base, so if they're logging out for the night, it wouldn't hurt them to actually go back. So I thought it would be scaled. Level 1 would take 1 minute, level 2 would take 2 minutes, level 3 would take 3 minutes, so it's all short scale stuff. The ships would take the longest to research for these micro modules at only 1 hour per ship. So if you take 6 hours out of a day, you could have this fully set up, and if you never bring that fleet back, you could effectively have a secondary base wherever you want. But when you pull it back, that's where it stops, and you have to research it again. And the more technology that is added, the longer it'll take, so it'll be a little bit more emphasis on actually using the outpost and keeping it. And along with the little support ships, the carriers would be similar to the Paladin. They would come with no support field, and you would equip them with a researchable support field that would take resources to build and stuff like that, just like as you would with the standard carrier. However, they wouldn't get any harmonic benefits or anything like that, and you can't put normal ships in the support fleets that would be added to the underpart, just like you can't put support ships you produce at this base in your standard reserve. So you can't put them in any of your standard fleets. So you effectively reduce the number of fleets you have by 1 by deploying your outpost anywhere, but then you increase your fleet number by 3 around that location. So in a PvP war, you could use this to your advantage by trapping your enemy fleets and using these stupid little cheap fleets to attack them, or you could produce micro cargo fleets in that one area to just pull in cargo you destroy to produce support fleets or support ships. Now, this is where the support fleet bay comes in. It would have a maximum capacity that would limit how many ships you can produce and store at that base. So instead of being like our standard base where we can store 99, I believe, of every ship we can produce, you'd be limited on the amount of weight that that micro fleet bay can hold. For the fleets as well, so you'd have to upgrade it, but again, everything would take very, very short times to encourage players to rapidly upgrade the secondary outpost. And as time progresses, I could see the micro outpost get new upgrades and things like that. However, just like our standard base, they'd be very vulnerable to certain builds and certain attacks. And it would be an interesting new aspect in my eyes to VEGA to allow a fleet to do something like that, because then you could have 2 farming fleets that would be locked to within 1 astronomical unit around it, and these fleets would have no repair time. However, if they are destroyed, the ships are gone. However, they wouldn't feature extremely long repair times. The longest build time of any of the ships should only be 1 hour. And their technology would limit their levels, so granted, there would still be farming on these ships and these fleets. However, there would be counters to them because each one would have certain fleet builds and things like that. And just like how you can call back all your fleets to your primary outpost, you can call back all the defensive fleets to your tiny outpost back to the main outpost, and under here it would be just like the other ones. It would drop down, it'd have a second drop down that would list off each fleet. Now you wouldn't be able to name these fleets because they wouldn't show up in your primary one. You'd only be able to select them. It would be Fleet 1, Fleet 2, Fleet 3, except for it wouldn't be named that. It would be Defense Fleet, Defense Fleet, Defense Fleet, or it would be just Fleet 1, 2, 3, as I stated. And the objective of this is to give players a little bit more to do in the course of the day, but add a little bit of an entertaining aspect to the game. But also provide your primary fleets with a location where they can dock safely and repair out in the sector without having to make a trip back to the base, so anyone who doesn't have a Javelin jump ship, which people still don't have, a few of them don't, it would be beneficial for them. And the freighters and everything, they should be available, again, to everybody. Coiners would be able to get these out faster and test them and find exploits much, much quicker than everybody else, but it could be a potentially entertaining idea. Okay, I've covered all the open bases and things like that, so in the future, things that could go with this idea could be a support battle cruiser, unique ships and things like that could introduce a different way to play the game. So for those of us that are looking for a different way to play the game but don't want to take an excess of time, this could be the way to do it. And the research should be 1 minute per level for the item. So ships would take 30 minutes to 1 hour depending on their class. The researchable technology, including weapons, should take 1 minute per level. So if you got level 1 items, it would only take 1 minute. Level 2 items would take 2 minutes, level 3 would take 3 minutes, up to level 5 taking 5 minutes, so it would be extremely short. However, you'd be able to skip all that time just because it's under the free time. The only thing you'd ever really have to take time to research would be the ships and to produce them, and again, they would take the same time they would take to research, 30 to 60 minutes. And again, they would be limited to an area of 1 astronomical unit all the way around the deployment location. So they cannot leave that circle. However, you can do whatever you want with them within that circle. And the support ships would be all robotic ships, so there would be no crew voices or anything like that when you select them, or no anything like that. And along with that, they would feature unique specials that would add unique benefits just to them, so they could have a little bit more versatility in certain scenarios. And I can see this idea becoming extremely well. And oh, the biggest thing I forgot to mention, if your support base is destroyed, or this micro or mobile outpost is destroyed, the entire fleet is destroyed. If it is 100% destroyed in one attack, it is sent back to your base. You lose that outpost, you lose your progress. So it can be a bit trolly, but in the long run could be rewarding at the same time. So this is to introduce a little bit of a risk and reward system to the game. One, you could have a mobile outpost that could be a storage location, production location, so you could set them up around an area. So let's say you're in the middle of a clan war. You could set them up around your sector or around your specific planet cluster, and you could say, this is our area, don't come in here. And you could set your fleets up on defense around the outpost, and they would all die defending it against possibly tyrants. But at least they'd fight, and they would die and fight. But I also have other concept ideas that could build off of this one. And if you guys actually want to hear more ideas and concept ideas based off of this one, or that include and build onto this idea, feel free to say so in the comment section below. But feel free to leave feedback, things like that. I most definitely want this idea to be much better than the support ship's idea, because I want this one to actually be a mobile outpost that actually feels kind of like the outpost, but it's superior but also weaker in the fact that it lacks combat modules, and fleets that can actually defend it are limited only to the defense fleet that is actually under the sub-menu that is under the primary menu under this right here. Now, I know that's a lot of information to take in, but just take a few moments, just let it sink in, then let me know what your feedback is. And again, this was an idea that was brought by between myself and another talking within the clan. And all it takes is just talking like this to come up with ideas like this. And again, all the research could be skipped for coins or free time. So you could skip all the research time, giving coiners an advantage. Or if people don't like that idea and they'd rather keep the permanent research, then they would have to go out there and deploy it, and it would work the way that normal research does, and it becomes permanent. And additions later on could improve upon it. However, it's just a concept idea. But let me know what all of you think, and if you have any ideas that could actually be added to this or improve upon it, or could help balance it, feel free to say so below. But that's going to be it, everybody. If you liked the video, feel free to leave a like. If you have anything to say or add information-wise or anything that could be cool for the idea, leave a comment below. And as always, everybody, I'll see you later.